Imagine a young, ambitious military officer, just 27 years old, standing at the dawn of a new era for his nation. This was Muammar Gaddafi in 1969. In a world defined by the Cold War's superpowers, he orchestrated a swift, bloodless coup, overthrowing King Idris of Libya and declaring the birth of the Libyan Arab Republic. This wasn't just a change of leadership. It was the start of a radical political experiment. Gaddafi, with his revolutionary zeal, was determined to forge a new path, not just for Libya, but for the world. Shortly after seizing power, Gaddafi unveiled his political philosophy in a small yet profoundly influential publication, the Green Book. This wasn't capitalism, nor was it communism. It was what he called the Third International Theory. The book outlined a unique vision of direct democracy, where power was supposedly held by the people through a system of local committees and congresses. He rejected parliamentary democracy and political parties, calling them tools of division and dictatorship. His ideology, a blend of Arab nationalism, socialism, and Islamic principles, aimed to create a utopian state free from foreign influence and internal exploitation. For Libyans and the world watching, this was a bold declaration. Was it the blueprint for a new kind of freedom, or the foundation for a new kind of authoritarianism? The answer would unfold over the next 4 decades. Beneath the sands of the Libyan desert lay a resource that would transform the nation and solidify Gaddafi's rule. Oil. The black gold funded a sweeping modernization of Libya. Suddenly, a nation that had been one of the poorest in the world saw the construction of new roads, hospitals, schools, and vast housing projects. Literacy rates soared, and life expectancy increased dramatically. Gaddafi nationalized the oil industry, redirecting its immense profits into ambitious social welfare programs, including free healthcare and education for all citizens. He launched the Great Man-Made River Project, a colossal engineering feat designed to bring fresh water from aquifers deep in the Sahara to the coastal cities, aiming to make the desert bloom. This tangible progress earned him significant support at home. For many Libyans, he was a hero, a modernizer who had lifted their country out of poverty and given them a sense of national pride. But this wealth also gave him the means to project his influence far beyond Libya's borders. While building his state at home, Gaddafi became an increasingly controversial figure on the world stage. He styled himself as a leader of the developing world, a champion against colonialism and imperialism. He provided funding, training, and arms to a wide array of revolutionary groups and liberation movements across the globe. This support made him a pariah in the West, particularly in the United States, which viewed him as a state sponsor of terrorism. Tensions escalated throughout the 1980s, culminating in the 1986 U.S. bombing of Tripoli and Benghazi. But the event that would truly define his international isolation was the 1988 bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie, Scotland. The attack, which killed 270 people, was traced back to Libyan intelligence agents. The world reacted with outrage. The United Nations imposed years of crippling sanctions, cutting Libya off from the international community and severely damaging its economy. The once celebrated revolutionary was now a global outcast. For over a decade, Libya remained a pariah state, isolated by sanctions and international condemnation. The economy stagnated, and the country's infrastructure began to crumble. But as the new millennium dawned, Gaddafi, ever the pragmatist, began a surprising diplomatic pivot. Following the 9/11 attacks, he condemned terrorism and began to cooperate with Western intelligence agencies. In 2003, he made a stunning announcement. Libya would abandon its programs to develop weapons of mass destruction and allow international inspectors full access. He also accepted responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing and agreed to pay billions in compensation to the victims' families. The world was astonished. One by one, sanctions were lifted. Western leaders, once his staunchest critics, began visiting Tripoli, and oil companies rushed back in. It seemed Gaddafi had successfully navigated his way back from the cold. He had transformed from a rogue leader into a seemingly rehabilitated statesman, an eccentric but now acceptable partner on the world stage. For a brief period, it looked as if his long and tumultuous reign might find a stable and peaceful future. But history had other plans. In early 2011, a wave of popular uprisings swept across the Arab world. What became known as the Arab Spring toppled long-standing rulers in Tunisia and Egypt, and the spirit of revolution soon reached Libya. It started with protests in the eastern city of Benghazi, sparked by grievances over corruption, unemployment, and political repression. Unlike his neighbors, Gaddafi did not go quietly. He responded with brutal force, vowing to hunt down the rats and cockroaches house by house. His televised speeches were defiant and inflammatory, promising to crush the rebellion and die a martyr on Libyan soil. The protests quickly escalated into a full-scale, bloody civil war. Rebel forces, composed of army defectors and armed civilians, captured Benghazi and established a transitional government. The country was split in two, with Gaddafi's forces controlling the west, including the capital, Tripoli, and the rebels holding the east. The stage was set for a final, violent confrontation. As the conflict intensified and Gaddafi's forces advanced on Benghazi, threatening a massacre, the international community decided to act, citing the responsibility to protect civilians. The United Nations Security Council authorized a no-fly zone over Libya. What began as a measure to prevent atrocities soon evolved into a full-scale NATO-led military intervention. For months, NATO warplanes pounded Gaddafi's military assets, providing crucial air support for the poorly equipped rebel fighters on the ground. The intervention was decisive. It crippled Gaddafi's army and allowed the rebels to push west. After a long and grueling siege, they broke through the defenses of Tripoli in August 2011. The capital fell amidst scenes of jubilation. Statues of Gaddafi were torn down, and his green flags were replaced by the old tricolor of the monarchy. But the man himself was nowhere to be found. He had vanished, escaping the capital to continue the fight from the shadows. Gaddafi's final stand took place in his hometown of Sirte. For weeks, the coastal city was subjected to a brutal siege by rebel forces backed by NATO air. On October 20th, 2011, a convoy carrying Gaddafi attempted to flee the city but was hit by a French airstrike. Dazed and wounded, he took refuge in a large drainage pipe. It was there that rebel fighters found him. Cell phone footage, broadcast around the world, captured his final, chaotic moments. He was captured alive, bloodied but defiant, before being killed in circumstances that remain disputed to this day. The news of his death was met with celebration in the streets of Libya and relief in Western capitals. After 42 years, the era of Muammar Gaddafi was over. The man who had taken power in a bloodless coup had met his end in a storm of violence, his body displayed in a meat locker for public viewing. The revolution had come full circle. What is the legacy of Muammar Gaddafi? It is a question that Libya and the world are still grappling with. Was he a visionary leader who lifted his people from poverty and challenged global powers, or a brutal dictator who oppressed his citizens and sowed chaos abroad? The answer is complex and deeply divisive. His supporters point to the social progress, the infrastructure he built, and the sense of national identity he forged. They remember a leader who provided free education, healthcare, and housing. His detractors remember the secret police, the public executions, the political prisoners, and the sponsorship of terror. They see a tyrant who squandered his nation's wealth on personal ambitions and foreign adventures. In the years since his fall, Libya has descended into factional violence and instability. The power vacuum he left behind was filled by competing regional powers and extremist groups, tearing the country apart. The state he had built, so centered around his own personality, collapsed without him. The dream of a stable, democratic Libya has remained elusive, lost in the rubble of civil war. Gaddafi's story is a powerful cautionary tale about the nature of power, revolution, and the enduring impact of a single individual on the destiny of a nation. His 42-year rule remains a study in contrasts, a legacy of development and destruction, of liberation and oppression, leaving behind a country still searching for its future. Thanks for watching. If you found this look into history interesting, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the figures and events that shaped our world. See you next time.